Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio here at European Utility Week. The next conversation we're going to capture is with Nadeem from Opower. Nadeem, first of all, thank you. Thanks for making the time to be with us here. We were talking a little bit off air, and you've got a very international experience. You set up the San Francisco office, you moved to Singapore, and I'm sure I'm missing some offices in between. You're now in London. Based on all that movement, it'd be quite nice for you to give us a sense of, where is the customer engagement piece, across the sort of international sort of areas. Are there some clear demarcations that you see, or is everybody by and large approaching it in the same way?
So I think every utility that we've engaged with across the world also seeks to better engage their customers. And I think they're all struggling with the same challenges of how to activate the customer base on a topic that most people find boring, which is energy. So that's something that I think cuts all the way across the world. The question that I think is interesting is, for what? So there's some utilities, for instance, in Europe that are competitive, that seek to engage the customer because they wish to make them more loyal, reduce the cost, perhaps sell them other things. If you look at a developing market like maybe India or the Philippines, there's certainly some of those same undercurrents, but there's also an even higher level goal, which is actually educating the customer. So for many people, they might be the first people in their family to actually have electricity in their house. And so there's actually a deeper understanding of how to use electricity wisely, improving energy literacy, if you will. I think there's a third category, which is how do we make smart use of all of the data that comes from smart meters? And that's a mega trend that's going across the world as well, because utilities are starting to realize, learning some lessons from the UK, learning some lessons from places like California and the US, that when you put a smart meter in someone's house, there is some expectation in the mind of the consumer that they're going to go get something else. And so the question is how does the utility do that and show the customer value and benefit? So those are some of the big themes.
So if we dive down that one area for a second, if I paraphrase you, you said, I've got a smart meter now, I'm the consumer. I'm now expecting something else. I've got this thing. How does a utility go about sort of delighting that customer and satisfying their expectation? Because again, when you look at it, there's been various levels of success, and let's be fair here. This is quite new. Again, even in the UK, the rollout is nowhere near complete, and that's a whole different discussion. But so what are you seeing that utilities are doing well to kind of really capitalize on that initial expectation?
Yeah. I think utilities that do this really well, they attack the before and after. So before a customer receives a smart meter, I think utilities that do this really well, they explain to the customer well in advance what they're going to get, when they're going to get it, how they're going to get it, what benefits they should be looking forward to. So a bit of pre-education before the event actually happens. And then I think the second thing is once the smart meter is installed, in today's day and age, we kind of expect immediate gratification, right? And so the utilities—
I've got it, what do I get?
So utilities do not, utilities that wait 6 months, 12 months, 5 years to turn something extra on, those utilities are not doing well. Ones that wait a week and give the customer something extra, they're generally in a very good position. And then I think your last question is, okay, something extra, what? What is the extra? Yeah. And in summary, I think the extra is actually peace of mind. So most people, what they don't want to look at very crazy EKG charts of their energy consumption at home.
Or try and figure out what a kilowatt hour is.
What a kilowatt hour is. Yeah. They want to know a few things. Where am I spending my money? And please let me know if something weird is going on. So let me know if I'm going to be on track for a high bill, just like my mobile phone company does. And just like my mobile phone company does, tell me where I'm spending my money. And utilities that just do those two things very well already are in a great position. I think the next level is using that data productively to provide very tailored recommendations to the customer, not only about how they could use energy more wisely, but also perhaps other things that they could buy that would help them use energy even more wisely. Maybe a solar panel, maybe some smart plugs for their house, maybe a new appliance, proactively providing these types of insights and recommendations.
And this is really the journey the utility sector is going through, isn't it? They're coming, they're now in a conversation almost, and they're having to come to the table with other services that keep that conversation alive.
Yeah.
Because if your conversation is always about the bill, that's not really a conversation. That's not really a two-way thing,
No.
is it?
No.
So what are you seeing where utilities are kind of innovating on that service side of things? I mean, are there any examples you can bring to bear?
So I think the innovation in services in the utility sector has not been as aggressive as probably I would expect, to be frank.
Yeah.
I think utilities are making relatively small initial investments in various different types of products right now, trying to see what is really getting traction. So an illustrative example, I think a lot of utilities in Europe have been experimenting with smart thermostats as a way to get deeper into the home and sell people additional things. And that's had very mixed, I think, results in terms of like consumer uptake.
I'm going to take the fifth on that one because I've got very biased views about that.
Okay,
But there we
okay.
go.
But, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see greater linkages between utilities and other like, consumer retail companies who perhaps can do retailing a little bit more effectively than energy companies. So we can see really like a big increase in the kinds of options and choices that consumers have in terms of buying other things.
So let's jump to it's not that much of a jump, but let's go there. So what we've really been talking about just now, and in the time that we've got, is a competitive retail environment, something like the UK and so on, where some of these other joins are possible. But what are you seeing in the sort of very regulated markets? The one I know quite well is the one in South Africa with Eskom, still a very vertically integrated utility, does everything. What is the motivation for a utility that is still in that world to do the customer engagement piece? I mean, that's probably the wrong way to do customer engagement, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably two levels. One's more psychological, emotional, brand, and the other one is very much dollars and cents. So every person who's a chief customer officer, CEO of a utility, wants to be a loved company, well liked by their customers, even if they're an integrated monopolist. So there certainly are benefits that accrue to companies that are well liked, both from a regulatory outcome perspective, but also simply from PR, attracting great employees, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a mega trend that cuts across the world. I think the next level is really about financial. So a company that is really good at engaging its customers effectively and efficiently, almost by definition, has lower operating expenses. So if you can digitalize the relationship with the customer, engage them frequently online, give them peace of mind, keep them from getting an unexpected high bill, they call less, they complain less, you don't have to roll as many trucks to their house to check their meter, et cetera, et cetera. So it's simply a happy customer is cheaper to service.
Yeah, how big is that operational gain? I mean, have you guys done any work in quantifying that and say, well, actually, if you have a, I don't know, whatever metric you use, this type of customer base, they look like this, by default your operating costs will go down by X. Are there any numbers you can put to that?
So I think at the high level that we believe that the opportunity is probably somewhere in like the $5 to $10 a year per customer. That's the total addressable market or the total size of the opportunity. Obviously what's going to be captured is less than that, but if you just think about how much it costs per year to serve an average customer, if we can no longer send them a bill in the mail, no longer have them call when they have a complaint, be able to change tariffs or move home all online, there's a big cost saving opportunity there. I think the second is really about capital efficiency, right? So the integrated utilities actually have an interest in changing the load curve because they also own the wires and the generation. Yeah. And so that's been the model. Eskom is a utility like that in South Africa. I think PG&E in California is similar. And a lot of our investment strategy is around engaging the customer to shape their behavior so that we can also shape the capital investment profile of the utility and help them save money.
And that's where those, actually in a weird way, those vertically integrated utilities are actually quite sweetly positioned to gain the maximum out of these. So one of the other areas I wanted to address, which is coming out more and more as a narrative, even though I hate the phrase, it's the prosumer, you know. The behind the meter generation, almost. That is, that surely must be another big key driver for, you know, utilities or energy retailers, let's use a more agnostic phrase, to really engage with customers. I mean, what are you seeing sort of internationally about that trend of individuals taking charge of their own energy destiny effectively?
So, in my mind, that market is still very nascent. The business models that are going to win, the products that are going to win, the level of uptake in the market, it's still very much uncertain. I think an interesting question is going to be, from whom do people buy those kinds of services and products? Do they buy it from Sungevity? Do they buy it from their power company? Do they buy it from Tesla? We're just not really sure exactly like who the winners are going to be in that space. I would like to think that energy companies, which are generally well trusted, even if they're not always well liked, they're well trusted by consumers for good energy related advice. I'd like to think that those kinds of companies, if they innovate correctly, will be able to really be at the forefront of driving the prosumer revolution and being able to get people to buy from them.
Do you not think that the very fact that you mentioned that market is nascent, but isn't technology driving us to a point where for the very first time these big monolithic organizations are seeing on the horizon not just one competitor, but a multitude of competitors, you know, because we will either get very quickly one market leader, you know, whoever that may be, and you mentioned a few companies, or we will see what most other markets do, huge fragmentation before consolidation happens. That must be pretty scary for a company that's managing something like the power grid. All those variables coming on board, I mean, must be frightening.
I would be frightened too.
Yeah.
And that's why engaging the customer at the outset is actually so important. Right? We talked about a smart meter, which is, in comparison to installing, you know, a battery and a solar panel on your house, that's actually a pretty de minimis event. And so being able to engage these customers and understand what's happening in their house, understand what they're interested in, what sort of purchase decisions they're considering, that's even more important for utilities in the future than it is today.
And just as we come to the end of time, sort of final question again, looking at your international sort of breadth of experience, what is the market that you guys are most excited about? I mean, where do you see the most innovation happening in this space at the moment?
So I think, especially on the topics that we've been discussing, Europe is definitely innovating quite aggressively. I think, you know, competition creates innovation, obviously, and there is a high degree of competition across Europe. And so what we're seeing is a number of players being very aggressive in exploring new opportunities. I think one illustrative example, you know, one of our clients is E.ON in the UK. And if you look at how that company is restructuring itself to actually focus specifically on consumer and retail related innovation, that's kind of evidence that this is very important in this market. It's not to say that from a business opportunity perspective, we don't see Asia and Japan being equally important, but on the topic of innovation specifically around the consumer, Europe is certainly in the lead.
And that's because of the market design and everything that's pushing it all. Well, Nadeem, thank you very much for taking time in our schedule. You can probably pick up background noise. We're here at European Utility Week, and it's getting busy, and Nadeem has got other engagements, so we're grateful for you to take the time to talk to us. Thank you as well for watching. As ever, many more interviews and comments on the Engerati network, engerati.com, and see you again online soon.